Hello, everyone, and welcome to an exploration of a truly transformative idea. Canada joining the European Union. Yes, you heard that right, Canada. Our beautiful, vast, and proudly independent nation could one day become a full-fledged member of the EU. Now, I know what you might be thinking. Isn't the EU on the other side of the Atlantic? How could that even work? Well, stick with me, because this isn't just a wild fantasy. It's a concept grounded in shared values, incredible opportunities, and the chance to secure Canada's future in a way that keeps us distinct, sovereign, and thriving. In recent years, we've heard whispers, and sometimes outright threats, about Canada being swallowed up by the United States, becoming its 51st state. Whether it's economic pressure, political rhetoric, or just the sheer gravitational pull of our southern neighbor, the idea has lingered like an unwelcome guest. But what if there's a better path? A path that doesn't mean losing our identity to Washington's stars and stripes, but instead aligning with a union of nations that respects diversity, champions democracy, and offers unparalleled economic and social benefits. That's where the European Union comes in. Today, we're diving deep into why Canada joining the EU will be the best thing to ever happen to us. We'll explore the massive benefits, from economic growth and global influence to cultural enrichment and environmental leadership. We'll also touch on some of the challenges, because no big idea is without its hurdles, but I promise you, the positives far outweigh the negatives. By the end of this, you'll see why linking arms with Europe could be Canada's ticket to a brighter, more independent future. One that keeps us out of America's shadow and firmly in control of our destiny. So, let's get started. First up, let us talk about the economy, because if there's one thing that could turbocharge Canada's prosperity, it's access to the EU's single market. Picture this, a market of over 450 million people, the second largest economy in the world, and a trading bloc that thrives on free movement of goods, services, and capital. By joining the EU, Canada wouldn't just peek through the window of this economic powerhouse. We'd get a seat at the table. Right now, Canada's trade is heavily tied to the United States. Over 75% of our exports go south. And while that's kept us afloat, it's also made us vulnerable. What happens when the US throws up tariffs, changes policies overnight, or flexes its muscle in ways that don't align with our interests? We've seen it before: trade disputes, threats, and uncertainty. Joining the EU flips that script. Suddenly, we're not just reliant on one neighbor. We're plugged into a network of 27 diverse, dynamic economies. Imagine Canadian businesses, from tech startups in Toronto to forestry giants in British Columbia, selling their goods tariff-free across Europe. No more customs headaches, no more trade barriers. Our maple syrup could flow into Paris cafes, our renewable energy tech could power German cities, and our critical minerals, like lithium for batteries, could fuel Europe's green revolution. EU leaders have already called Canada a perfect match for their resource needs, and they're right. We've got what they want: vast reserves of rare earths, timber, and clean energy potential. In return, we'd gain access to Europe's cutting-edge industries, skilled labor markets, and massive consumer base. And here's the kicker: the EU isn't just about trade, it's about investment. European firms would pour money into Canada, building factories, creating jobs, and boosting our infrastructure. Look at Horizon Europe, the EU's $137 billion research and innovation program. As an EU member, Canadian scientists, entrepreneurs, and universities could tap into that funding, driving breakthroughs in AI, healthcare, and climate tech. Compare that to the US, where funding often comes with strings attached or gets slashed on a political whim. Now, let's talk numbers. The Comprehensive Economic and Trade Agreement, or CETA, already gives us a taste of EU trade benefits, eliminating tariffs on 98% of goods. But full membership, that's next level. Analysts estimate that removing all remaining barriers could add hundreds of billions to our GDP. Some say up to $200 billion annually, just from harmonizing provincial trade alone, then amplifying it through Europe. That's jobs, higher wages, and a stronger safety net for every Canadian. Contrast that with becoming the 51st state. We'd be a junior partner in a system that prioritizes American corporations, American workers, and American rules. Our industries would face US regulations that don't fit our needs, and our economic sovereignty would vanish. With the EU, we'd be equals, shaping policies that work for us, not just tagging along behind Washington. This isn't just about money. It's about control, opportunity, and a future where Canada thrives on its own terms. Next, let's talk about something closer to the heart: culture and values. Canada and the EU aren't just economic buddies. We're soulmates when it comes to how we see the world. Freedom, equality, human rights, a strong social safety net. These aren't just buzzwords. They're the bedrock of who we are. Joining the EU would be like finding a family that gets us, celebrates us, and helps us shine even brighter. More than half of Canadians trace their roots to Europe: English, French, Irish, Italian, Ukrainian, you name it. Our history is woven with European threads. From the French settlers of Quebec to the British traditions in our parliament, joining the EU wouldn't feel foreign. It'd feel like coming home in a way, but with a modern, forward-thinking twist. Think about what we'd gain socially. The EU champions universal healthcare, affordable education, and workers' rights. Sound familiar? It's practically Canada's playbook, but on a grander scale. As an EU member, we'd lock in those values with a network of nations that backs them up. Free university education in places like Germany or Finland. Canadians could access that. Robust parental leave and childcare support across Scandinavia. We'd bring those ideas home and make them even better. And then there's freedom of movement, one of the EU's crown jewels. Imagine this: you finish school in Vancouver, and instead of just looking south, you pack your bags for Paris, Berlin, or Lisbon. You live, work, and explore 27 countries without a visa, without borders, without hassle. Young Canadians could chase their dreams across a continent that respects diversity and rewards talent. Meanwhile, Europeans could bring their skills and cultures here, enriching our cities and towns. Compare that to the US 51st state scenario. Down there, healthcare's a privilege, not a right. Education drowns you in debt, and social programs get cut to fund tax breaks for billionaires. Our Canadian identity, that mix of compassion, multiculturalism, and quiet pride, would erode under American individualism. With the EU, we'd amplify who we are, not lose it. We'd trade hockey for soccer, well, maybe not entirely. Share poutine with Prague, and show Europe how maple syrup makes everything better. This is cultural synergy, not surrender. Now, let's zoom out to the world stage. Joining the EU wouldn't just change Canada at home. It'd make us a global player like never before. Right now, we're a middle power, respected, but often overshadowed by giants like the US, China, or Russia. Teaming up with the EU puts us in the big leagues, with a voice that echoes across continents. The EU is a titan in diplomacy, climate action, and peacekeeping. As a member, Canada would help shape its agenda, from negotiating trade deals to leading the charge on net zero emissions. We'd bring our Arctic expertise, our peacekeeping legacy, and our knack for bridging divides to a bloc that values collaboration. Together, we'd counterbalance powers like China or a volatile US, all while staying true to our principles. Think about security, too. NATO's great, but the EU's common security and defense policy offers another layer of protection, one we'd help steer. No more relying solely on American military might, which often comes with American priorities. We'd defend our sovereignty and Europe's, standing tall against threats old and new. And here's where the 51st state idea crumbles. If we join the US, we'd be a cog in their machine, a northern outpost following Washington's orders. Our foreign policy would be dictated by their interests, not ours. With the EU, we'd gain allies who see us as equals, not subordinates. We'd be a transatlantic bridge, linking North America and Europe in a partnership that reshapes the world, all while keeping Canada. Canada, let's talk about the planet, because if there's one area where Canada and the EU could change the game, it's the environment. Climate change isn't waiting, and neither should we. The EU-US European Green Deal is the gold standard, a plan to go carbon neutral by 2050, backed by billions in funding and bold policies. Joining the EU would supercharge Canada's green ambitions, making us a leader, not a follower. We've got the resources, hydropower, wind, forests, and the EU's got the tech and the will. Together, we'd build a clean energy powerhouse. Canadian firms could tap into EU subsidies to innovate, while our vast landscapes could host joint projects like carbon capture or renewable grids. The EU's already eyeing our lithium and rare earths for their battery revolution. As members, we'd be at the heart of that shift. Contrast that with the US, where climate policy swings with every election. One day it's Paris Accord, the next it's drill baby drill. As the 51st state, we'd be tethered to that chaos. With the EU, we'd lock in a stable, progressive alliance that prioritizes the planet and our kids' future. Okay, let's be real. No big idea is perfect. Joining the EU wouldn't be a cakewalk. First, there's geography. We're an ocean away, not nestled between France and Germany. That could complicate logistics, like shipping goods or attending Brussels meetings. But here's the thing, the EU already includes Cyprus, an island far from mainland Europe. And technology, think video calls and fast transatlantic flights, shrinks that gap every day. Then there's sovereignty. Some worrying we'd lose control to EU regulations, rules on AI, farming, or trade that might not fit Canada perfectly. Fair point, but we'd have a vote in crafting those rules, unlike CETA, where we just follow along. And compared to the US, where we'd have zero say as a state, the EU's a partnership, not a takeover. Finally, there's the US reaction. They might not love us cozying up to Europe. Tariffs or border tensions could flare, but with the EU's economic muscle behind us, we'd weather that storm far better than as a lone nation or a submissive state. These challenges, they're real, but they're manageable. The rewards dwarf them. So, there you have it. Canada joining the EU isn't just a pipe dream. It's a bold, brilliant alternative to fading into America's shadow. Economically, culturally, globally, environmentally, the benefits are staggering. We'd secure our future, amplify our voice, and stay true to who we are. Becoming the 51st state means losing ourselves. Joining the EU means finding our place among equals. Let's choose strength, independence, and a transatlantic destiny. Canada, the EU's waiting. Let's make it happen.